Good morning. Today is Friday, the 25th day of Tishrei. It is Erev Shabbos Bereshis, beginning, as the saying goes, that the way we start on this Shabbos Bereshis, that's the way the year will go. We're going to put ourselves in the right place. And we begin today, chapter 25, letter 25 in the Igeret Hakodesh, part of the Tanya, where we have the collection of the Alter Rebbe's letters. Now, in this letter, we learn some very fundamental, important things in Yiddishkeit. We learn about the Hasidic approach, how not to get angry, how to manage anger. And the Alter Rebbe is going to go into understanding how no matter what happens, anger is something that should not be, because ultimately everything comes from Hashem. The way the Alter Rebbe brings this addresses a letter, a saying of a teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, which was a teaching that was really controversial, meaning there's a book called the Tzavos Arivash, means a testament of the Baal Shem Tov, like the Living Testament, but the truth is it's not a living testament. Baal Shem Tov never wrote a tzava'ah, and those were a collection of sayings, statements that the students of the Baal Shem Tov repeated, and they wrote down, and they wrote a book. And in this book, one of the statements the Baal Shem Tov made, what they recorded, was about when a Jew prays, and then a goy comes and interrupts you. So they say about the Baal Shem Tov says that in that moment Hashem dwells in that goy also. And that was a statement that caused those who opposed the Baal Shem Tov to say, you see, here, how could the Baal Shem Tov say this? This is wrong. And the Alter Rebbe, without really directly addressing the question, he just explains what that means, what the statement means. And he says that really the Baal Shem Tov didn't write those words. The Baal Shem Tov really spoke in Yiddish, and they wrote the Baal Shem Tov's teachings in Hebrew. So in the translation, you can have some things that are not exact. It's not the words that the Baal Shem Tov used. And Alter Rebbe is going to explain also the nuances, what it means, what the Baal Shem Tov is saying. But like we said, we'll learn from the whole this of the letter was that the message that comes out in this letter is also about how to deal with situations in our lives and how not to get angry and realize that everything comes from Hashem. So let's see inside. This is the Alter Rebbe. Lahavi nimri bina, to comprehend the words of understanding, the words of Torah. Masha kasuv b'sefer hanikra tzava'as rivash. What is stated in the book called Tzava'at Rivash, the testament of Rivash is Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem, the Baal Shem Tov. And he says, "Agam shebe'emes eino tzava'osei klal v'lo yitziva klal lifnei petirosei." Says, though in fact, he says, it is not at all his will or testament, and he did not ordain anything before his passing. So what is this book about? He says, the teaching in this book, are merely gleanings of his pure sayings. sheliktu lekutei basa lekutei, that were gathered as a compilation after compilations, meaning the many different students gathered. And the compilers did not know how to phrase his teachings exactly. And like we said before, because the Baal Shem Tov really was speaking in Yiddish, while these teachings are in Hebrew. The book is written in Hebrew. The connotations, however, of the teachings are absolutely true. The contents of the teachings of the Tzavas Arivash is true, except sometimes they didn't choose the right words. So he begins by prefacing the statement, this will be understood by first considering the teachings of our sages of blessed memory. Whoever is in rage resembles an idolater. Very strong statement. Where is that statement from, by the way? Some people think it's from the Gemara. It's not. It's from the Zohar. In the Zohar, it says, I mean, there's many other places it says things about a person who gets angry, all kind of Gehenna rules in him. But here the Zohar makes such a strong statement saying that anyone who gets angry resembles an idolater. It's like worshiping idols. Why is it so? Says the Alter Rebbe, the reason for this is clear to those who know understanding. Because at the time of his anger, faith in God and his individual divine providence has left him. At that moment when you get angry, obviously you don't believe that what happens comes from God. I mean, if you walk into a wall, you don't get angry at the wall. Why? Because, the wall didn't do anything to you. You just walked into it. But the same thing, the truth is, if you would believe that whatever happens comes from Hashem, then there is no reason to get angry. But were he to believe that what happened to him was God's doing, he would not be angry at all. So, of course, you can say there's a big difference between walking into a wall and somebody coming punching you in your face. The person that punches you in your face has a choice to do it or not to do it, and yet he chose to do it. Says the Alter Rebbe, you got to differentiate between what happened to you and the person. It says, this is true. It is a person possessed of free choice that is cursing him or striking him or causing him damage to his property and so on. And indeed, therefore, he is guilty according to the laws of man and the laws of heaven for his evil choice. However, Afal Pikain, nevertheless, says the Alter Rebbe, as regards to the person harmed, this incident was already decreed in heaven. And God has many agents through whom he can act. So the fact that this person did something, yes, you could take him to court. But to get angry about something, about what happened, it is like saying you're denying God's doing. You're denying God's ruling this world. Because everything really comes from Hashem. The Loyoy, this says not only that a heavenly decree gave permission in principle and made it possible that he suffer injury. He says, "Elafilu b'shazu mamesh shemakeyu oimekaloloi." Mislabesh boy koyach Hashem veruach piv v'mechayeyu v'kaimei. It says that even at the very moment at which the offender strikes or curses him, there is vested in him a force from God and the breath of his mouth, which animates and sustains him. What? So the person doing this, doing what is doing because Hashem allows him to do it. And he gives him the energy to do it. And he brings an example with a story with King David. It says, Kemesha Kasuv ki Hashem Omar Loi Kalel. Where it is written, for God told him curse. The story there goes with this was when Avshalom, David's son, rebelled against him. And at that one point there, Shimi ben Gera went and cursed David. And Avishai ben Zeruiah wanted to kill him right away. And David stopped him. King David told him, don't do anything. He says, because God told him to curse. Obviously, we don't find anywhere that God told Shimi to curse David. Now, where did he say to Shimi to go curse David? Obviously, God didn't do it. So what did King David mean when he says God told him to curse? It says, this is only this thought that occurred in Shimi's heart and his mind to curse David. This descended from God, who was thus responsible for such a thought entering Shimi's mind. And the breath of his mouth, which animates all the host of heaven. And that breath, this animated the spirit of Shimi at the time he spoke those words to David. It says, if the breath of God's mouth departed from the spirit of Shimi for a single moment, he could not have spoken at all. And that's exactly what he meant when he said God told him to curse. He says, this is the meaning of the statement, that for God told him at that very moment, when Shimi was speaking these words, he told him, curse David. And then what happened there with the story of Shimi? So was then the end of his life, King David said to his son that he should punish Shimi. Why didn't he tell him at the beginning? At the beginning he said to Avishai not to do anything. In the end of his life, he told him to punish. Because in the end of the day, Shimi did something wrong. You don't curse a king, obviously. But King David did not want this to be something that of his own personal revenge. It's not something that he wanted to, that he should be punished, but he should be punished because of doing something wrong. That's why right away he told Avishai not to do anything. Only at the end of his life, when there was nothing there, there was nothing personal involved anymore, and he knows that this person needs to be punished, he told Shlomo to punish him. But the bottom line is, what we take from this story, from this approach, is that no matter what happens, everything, when we realize that everything comes from Hashem, you don't get angry. As someone said, you get even, you don't get angry. Well, obviously, according to the Torah, cannot take revenge, cannot do things like that. But yes, if someone harms you, you can take him certainly to court, and the court will decide, being that it's a rabbinical court, they will decide what is the right thing to do. But to get angry, this is certainly not a thing to do. And it helps us when we realize everything comes from Hashem, especially when we realize that whatever Hashem does is ultimately for the good. That would certainly help us with this Hasidic approach to anger management. So this is the end of today's shiur, and Me'ezrat Hashem will continue on Sunday. Join us again. Thank you so much for joining. Any questions?